Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome to this extra weekend edition of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Now, there are a couple of big updates we need to discuss today, so we're on top of everything as we move into next week. For those only interested in the Russia story, this is in the second half of the video. You can skip to that using the chapter feature below. Otherwise, first up, we need to discuss rare earths. In a sign that US President Donald Trump's phone call with General Secretary Xi Jinping achieved some deliverables for the United States, China reportedly has approved a limited number of temporary export licenses for rare earth materials destined for major US automakers, including General Motors and Ford, in a move that offers short-term relief to strained global supply chains but leaves longer-term uncertainty unresolved. The licenses, reportedly valid for 6 months, allow some suppliers to resume shipments of rare earths, critical components in electric motors and other advanced technologies. However, UK-based Reuters notes that it remains unclear which specific materials are covered by the approvals. China's Ministry of Commerce began issuing the export permits on Friday, following a backlog created by its sweeping export restrictions imposed on the 4th of April. There was also an update yesterday on Saturday suggesting that more approvals could be on the way. The move came shortly after a 90-minute phone call between US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, during which Trump said the two leaders discussed rare earths and related trade issues. While Trump claimed Xi agreed to resume some exports, Beijing's official statements were more restrained, avoiding direct reference to rare earths. Rare earth magnets, vital for manufacturing electric vehicles, drones, and even guided missiles, are overwhelmingly produced in China, which controls over 90% of global supply. The April restrictions had triggered alarm in Washington and Brussels as Western manufacturers feared production halts without reliable access to these critical components. We have been following the story very closely almost every day this week. The American and European Chambers of Commerce in China welcomed the recent issuance of licenses but stressed the need for more transparency and a faster approval process. Michael Hart, president of the American Chamber, warned that multiple US firms may face material shortages within weeks if further licenses are not issued soon. In Beijing, officials framed the export controls as consistent with international norms. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Liu Pengyu emphasized that the measures were not targeted at any specific country and aimed to safeguard global peace and stability. However, Chinese experts have said that the restrictions remain a powerful bargaining chip in the ongoing trade war negotiations. Quote, China will use the rare earth card to force concessions, end quote, said Jin Sanrong, an outspoken nationalist academic and advisor to Chinese policymakers on Friday. He noted that the export limitations had proven effective in pushing the US towards negotiation. Still, there are signs the strategy could backfire. The European Commissioner and other Western officials are calling for accelerated efforts to diversify critical mineral supply chains and reduce reliance on China. Unlike Western technology restrictions on exports to China, like semiconductors, rare earths can be mined and processed in many different countries and locations around the world. It just takes time and money to shift the dirty operations. Meanwhile, Indian automakers are facing especially severe disruptions due to China's increasingly stringent curbs on rare earth magnet exports, with supplies stuck at Chinese ports since early April. At least 2 applications for India-bound shipments have been denied, despite approvals being granted for the same firm's US and German operations. The export restrictions stem from China's new certification process, requiring buyers to prove end use and ensure materials won't support defense or reach the US. The process takes over 45 days and has created a massive global backlog. Though India's government endorsed more than 30 import requests, none yet have been cleared by Beijing. In a 28th of May presentation to officials, the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, SIAM, warned that Indian production could halt as early as this month if this issue is not resolved. While Indian companies navigate the bureaucratic maze to gain Chinese export permits, government officials are urging firms to develop domestic refining capabilities and explore alternative technologies. However, these long-term solutions offer little help in averting immediate supply chain crises. As rare earths become a flashpoint in the wider US-China trade dispute, manufacturers are bracing for more disruption and reconsidering their long-term sourcing strategies. Next up, we move to Russia and China, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you want to be on top of the most up-to-date analysis on this country as we move into this new period of uncertainty and danger, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification icon, and you will be. Next up, while Vladimir Putin publicly proclaims a golden age of strategic partnership with China, a newly leaked Russian intelligence document reveals a starkly different narrative behind closed doors, one of suspicion, espionage, and an intensifying battle for security dominance. According to an 8-page internal memo from Russia's Federal Security Service, FSB, obtained by US-based The New York Times, which published a report on it yesterday, and vetted by 6 Western intelligence agencies, China is viewed not as a trusted ally, but as a growing threat to Russian national security. Though undated, the document appears to have been written in late 2023 or early 2024, and was part of a broader counterintelligence program known as Entente 4, initiated just days before Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, of course, like any piece of intelligence or information from the intelligence world, we have no idea how accurate this information is. Indeed, it could even be Western disinformation for all we know. However, what we do know is that Russia and China have had a much longer history of distrust and enmity than of friendship, and it is worth at the very least noting what these reports are saying about this document. The report details the operations of a previously undisclosed FSB unit tasked specifically with monitoring Chinese espionage efforts. These include attempts to recruit disaffected Russian scientists and military personnel, siphon sensitive data on Western weaponry used in Ukraine, and use academic or commercial cover to penetrate strategic sectors like the Arctic, Central Asia, and advanced defense research. Launched just 3 days before Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the FSB's Entente 4 counterintelligence program was designed to address the growing threat from China. The timing was no coincidence, with Moscow's military intelligence services redirected towards Ukraine. Fears mounted that Beijing would exploit Russia's vulnerability and distraction to deepen its intelligence footprint. According to the document, those fears were well-founded. Chinese operatives have allegedly increased efforts to spy on Russian military operations, particularly to gather information on Western drones, combat tactics, and software modifications. Beijing's intelligence agents have also targeted aviation scientists and defense researchers, including those who worked on the discontinued Soviet hovercraft-style warship. The FSB outlines a range of countermeasures, including direct warnings to Russian scientists and officials, expanded surveillance of Chinese nationals, and hacking into WeChat communications to monitor suspected espionage. Yet the memo also emphasizes extreme caution. Officials are instructed not to publicly identify China as a threat and are required to seek approval from top leadership before undertaking any sensitive actions. The goal: contain the threat without jeopardizing the broader political and economic relationship. Indeed, China remains a lifeline for Russia's wartime economy. Beijing is the largest buyer of Russian oil, and Chinese firms have replaced many Western brands that exited Russia after the 2022 invasion. Chinese companies also provide semiconductors, industrial machinery, and military components, support that has helped Moscow withstand punishing Western sanctions. But this dependence does not bind Russia's security services to what they see as China's long-term strategic ambitions. The document notes growing concern that Chinese academics are laying the groundwork for historical claims to Russian territory, particularly in the Far East, including areas like Vladivostok, which China lost to Russia in the 19th century. In 2023, Beijing released an official map that included Chinese names for several Russian regions, raising alarm in Moscow. There is also unease about China's soft power push in Central Asia and growing interest in the Arctic Northern Sea Route, a potential global trade corridor made more viable by climate change. The FSB alleges that Chinese intelligence is using academic research partnerships and mining companies as cover to collect data on Russia's Arctic infrastructure and resource development. Complicating matters further is China's interest in Russia's Wagner mercenary group. The memo claims Beijing aims to use Wagner's battlefield expertise to train its own military personnel and private security firms. particularly in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Despite these suspicions, Russia appears unwilling or unable to curtail its deepening ties with China. Analysts suggest that President Putin, fully aware of the risks, believes the strategic gains outweigh the dangers. As Alexander Gabuev of the Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center noted, quote, Putin believes that he can go much deeper into this Chinese embrace, and it's not risk-free, but it is worth it, end quote. Still, the internal tensions are undeniable. As Paul Colby, a former CIA officer and expert on Russian intelligence, puts it, quote, you don't have to scratch very deep into any Russian military or intel official to get deep suspicion of China. In the long run, China is, in spite of the unlimited partnership, also a potential threat. End quote. Ultimately, the FSB memo underscores a fragile balancing act. Russia is trying to contain Chinese influence without undermining the very partnership it relies on to survive. It is a partnership born of necessity, sustained by pragmatism, and shadowed by distrust. A distrust, if pushed too far, could result in Russia at some point in the future stabbing its ally in the back. Okay, that is today's extra Sunday episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. If you got some value from today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you again. Have a good weekend. Have a restful weekend, and I will see you for a new week of developments tomorrow.